Yeah, she chewed scenes up even when they were together. I couldn't stop looking at her, like on the mountaintop when they were going after the dragon, and not for obviously. I look over and Ian's like had this knee jerk reaction of, "Whoa, I don't need to know about that."
Of course, you couldn't stop looking.
Well, no, and yes, she's beautiful, right? Hello and welcome back to the What's the Verdict podcast. I'm JJ, your host. I'm here with my co-hosts, Javier.
What's up, jerks?
Matson.
Better red than dead.
And Ian.
Say some shit.
All right, so today we are going to talk about the Witcher TV show. To get started, as usual, let's just kind of give a brief synopsis. So obviously, the Witcher is Henry Cavill playing Geralt of Rivia.
Dude, I didn't realize it was Henry Cavill for the entire first episode.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't recognize him.
It was that white wig.
Yeah, I don't know what it was.
He didn't have a CGI'd upper lip.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It looked like normal when he was talking. Yeah, so he is the Witcher. He's a monster killer, mutant, all around nice and not nice at the same time guy. So it's his story from front to back, plus the addition of Yennefer Vengerberg, her story, which is very interesting. And then, of course, Ciri or Cirilla. So we'll talk about this in detail. I'll be honest, guys, just up front, I really enjoyed this show. I didn't think I was going to because I've been through the books. I've been through the first 2 games at the time. I always worry about stuff that's based on books that I love. I really do.
Yeah.
And so I was a little concerned, but I'm not going to lie. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed just to get out there Henry Cavill's performance. We'll talk about that more here in a minute. But yeah, that's my thing. I like this show. What do you guys think?
I think I'll talk next because I probably have the most. I didn't know anything about The Witcher at all. I knew it was a video game, but I only knew that because someone told me, and I remember like, oh, it's a video game. I didn't know there were short stories. I didn't know anything, and I don't even remember who told me to watch it. But I was looking for something on Netflix. Boom, turned it on. Found out Javier's been watching. We talked about it a little bit and just got totally sucked into this story. Was really excited that I could just binge watch it. I think I'll watch it in like 2 days.
Yeah.
Very, very entertaining. I was also extremely confused, and I'll talk about that a little bit later because I didn't.
Everyone was.
I didn't know any of this stuff, and we'll get to that later. But overall, very impressed and excited to kind of dive in.
Yeah, I'm going to echo Matson. Like, I knew that the games existed. I've probably played like 15 minutes of the first game and then kind of got bored, gave up. I didn't know that there were short stories or books. So
He gets bored a lot.
I do.
He does.
Very short attention span. But I really like this show because you don't have to have played the games or have read the books or short stories
Fair point.
to really like get the story and really enjoy the story. But I've also heard that it's really rewarding for people who have read the books and do have that like background to it. So I really like that it caters to both audiences.
So
That's a good point.
That's funny that you say that because I started watching this and thought I have no idea what's going on, so I got to go back and read the book. And so that's what I ended up doing is so I've read the first book, or well, depending on how you look at the order, but I enjoyed elements of the show. I can't say that it was a home run for me. I know I'm going to be that guy.
It's good. We need one.
Yeah, there's got to be at least one of those.
I think I'm going to be closer to Ian than these two.
I'm
Okay.
looking
See,
forward to
that's good to hear.
crucifying both of you.
Me too.
So I enjoyed it. Like I said, I enjoyed elements of it, but there were definitely times where I was like, is this really how I want to spend my time? Or can I fast forward kind of like a little bit? So
Can I get this out here? My biggest, I'm just going to get it out there right away. My biggest knock is, could the producers have just put in maybe a date or any form? I think I already talked to you guys about that. Just give me a date. Let me know that, hey, we have 3 different stories all culminating together. It was after the 3rd or 4th episode. I literally had to Google and look up what's the law of surprise, what's all these other things. And then I was like, oh, and then I was like, I like this now. But to me, that is a huge knock because I, as a viewer, had to do that myself. If you're making a series, you need to be doing that for me because that's a turnoff. Some people may have just stopped because they were so confused. I read comment after comment of people that did the same thing I did and were like, all right, that's fine, but you should not have to do that.
I mean, to be fair, it doesn't hold your hand through the series, but if you just, like listen to the fucking dialogue, you understand what's going on.
No,
Like,
I'm going
so
to
here's Javier about the details.
No, he's
all of
being a
sudden.
dick.
No, I mean, he's kind of being a dick, but I'm also going to put myself in the middle because I don't disagree. I think there should have been something, right? So when I started watching it, I was actually shocked because I went, oh shit, they're starting starting with the short stories. I didn't expect that because as a book reader, I was like, I figured they'd jump right into book one, the actual novelization one, and then maybe do some backtracking to show how they got there. But so when they first start off and the first person you meet is Renfri and he's killing the Kikimora, I'm like, oh shit, they're going for it right into the short stories. I was like, I love this. But then, so I was never confused because I'd read the books, all the short stories up and through the novels. So I was like, oh, this is a cool place to start. But then when they jump immediately to series timeline, I was like, whoa, they should have put something there. Not for me. I don't care. I get it. But I'm watching it with Casey going, or I'm watching it expecting to watch it later with Casey going, she's not, I'm going to have to explain this shit because she's not going to know who's this girl. Why is she? And I'm like, yeah, now I got to tell you, this is two different timelines. And then they, of course, really fuck it up when they throw in Yennefer's timeline, which is even further back.
Isn't it like 90 years? Like Yennefer's is like 30 years, and then series is like 2 or 3 weeks or something.
Yeah. So series is very short. Like it's not, I don't even know if it's 3 weeks. It's very, very short. And they kind of twist it a little. But yeah, Yennefer's goes way back because Yennefer's old. She's not the oldest sorceress by a long shot.
She don't look old.
No, I know. But her story
very well.
very well. Or not at all, as the case actually is. But yeah, so her story starts way back, long before anything else. So it's a very interesting way to go. I don't disagree with what Mattson's saying either.
I'm not asking for much, but I think to me, that's a knock. They should have foreseen something like that. But beyond that,
like I don't disagree either, but they give you good like time points that they base things off of, like before or after the sack of that city, or like Yennefer drops that she's been in courts for a decade. Like they help you understand like where you're at.
There's some of that in there, yeah.
Casey made a good point to me when she watched it. So my second run through was to watch it with her, and part of that was I wanted to see what
second run.
Oh god, here we go. Yes, I okay.
Have you watched it a third run through already?
No, I haven't.
Last episode, he's like, I'm not one to rewatch stuff.
I that's fair. I misspoke in the last episode. I'm not one to rewatch shit I don't like. Let me rephrase.
I mean, no one is.
No, I know, but here's the thing: is there's not a lot of things that I like enough to rewatch. We just happen to review 2 things in a row that I liked well enough to rewatch. I watched 1917 twice for the sake of this podcast. Fuck me, give me that 2.5 hours back. I would never have watched it a second time.
That was 5 hours back. Watched it twice.
No shit.
That was a pterodactyl flying through. You heard that?
But with this, it was so I'm watching it with Casey, and she told me when you get to the scene in Sintra where you realize that Ciri is Pavetta's daughter, that's when she goes, if you hadn't told me before we started the show, I would not have figured out that there were different timelines until that moment.
Honestly, for a second, I didn't know those were 2 separate people.
Oh, the daughter and the granddaughter? Yeah, Pavetta is Ciri's mom.
Yeah.
You're just now, we've educated you.
No. I figured that out in the show. Oh. But like during that dinner scene, when you see, what's her name?
Oh, Pavetta.
I was like, oh, what is Ciri doing here? Like, because that's what really confused me. I was like, oh, this is a flashback. Like, but it's not because she's still the same age. That threw me through a loop, man.
And I think they could have avoided that with just a timeline reference.
Let's jump into the kind of the character progression and everything. I feel pretty passionate about this. I'm someone that loves Henry Cavill. Like I loved him in Superman.
Yeah.
I loved him in The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Can we establish this real quick? Is it Cavill?
Cavill.
Cavill. Thank you for correcting me, Henry. If you listen to this ever, sorry.
I'm sure he's listening right now, actually.
Listen to these crazy bastards.
For me, a character or a man of not very many words. That's what I really take away from this. I read something, I don't know if it was you guys talking to me over something I read online. He said, it might have been Javier saying this, he says more in a grunt than anyone says in like numerous amounts of dialogue. My wife really likes the TV series, Gilmore Girls, where they talk like excessively. This is literally the exact opposite with this character, where he'll say like a one-liner or like a sentence, and then you just know, you're just like bam. And I thought he was casted perfectly for that, and obviously his physique fits into the character. But as the movie goes along, you start to understand where his mind's at, what's happened to him, and those simple phrases he gives mean so much more to you. And I just thought through his body language, his facial expressions, his grunting, that you understood him in a way that I don't know if other characters or actors could have portrayed that to me. And I was just extremely impressed in how he was able to give so much by giving us so little.
Interesting that you bring that up, Mattson, because I was reading an article where they were talking to the directors and the producers of this show. When they first wrote the scripts for it, they hadn't yet 100% cast Henry Cavill. Like he was always in the top of where they wanted to be, and he fought to get the role because he's actually a gamer, which makes me like him even more.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's a huge gamer. If you watch his interviews, like they all ask him about it. He's like, I've played these games multiple times through, and he fought to get this role because he loved the character of Geralt so much in these games. So I really like that. But the reason I say that is a producer was talking about the scripting was huge, and he's very expositional in the books. He talks a lot actually in the book.
Oh, you did mention that's okay.
Yeah, he talks a ton in the books, and Henry Cavill knew that. He's read the books, he's played the games, he talks a shit ton. But then in this show, they'd written the script to have a lot of that exposition and the talking that he does, and then they cut the script back because Henry Cavill was so good at not saying anything and still portraying the message that they literally changed the whole script for him because he did so good.
That's awesome.
They were like, we don't need all this shit because he just grunted and we all know what he meant, and we don't have to go any further. And so, yeah, I love that too. He grunts, and it's every emotion. It's not he grunts when he's pissed. He grunts when he's happy. When he likes something. When he's laughing, it's a grunt. And you're like, oh, he's laughing at him right now. So I love that. That's one of my favorite parts of this show too.
I think the coolest parts of like the character is the morality that's being called into question. People are trying to be clever about the morality of stuff, but I thought they did a really good job with Geralt because in the very beginning, one of his lines is, "If I have to choose between two evils, I'd rather not make a decision."
Let me interrupt you real quick because we're actually one of the things I wanted to talk about is Ian brought this up and sent me a text last night. So I'm going to read the quote that you're referencing, and then we'll talk about it. So he says, "Evil is evil, Stregobor. Lesser, greater, middling. It's all the same. I'm not judging you. I haven't only done good in my life either. But now, if I have to choose between one evil and another, then I prefer not to choose at all."
Yeah, like I think that is a great point, right? Like a great moral stance. And from what I understand in the short stories, he's constantly making that moral choice. Like there are often times where he's not killing monsters in these short stories, and instead he's like befriending them or letting them go because he believes that they're sentient, like they understand what's going on, and it would be immoral to kill this thing. And I just love the idea that he's demonized through this entire universe as being just this reckless, crazy witcher. But really, he has this internal battle of what's right and what's wrong.
See, and I mentioned that I liked elements of this show, and that's one of those elements that I liked is that morality question. In fact, I've rewatched the first episode a couple of times because I think that's been my favorite one so far. And I really like that kind of question about how do you approach thing. Is evil, or is there such thing as a lesser evil? And that's something I wanted to kind of ask you guys is like, how do you line up with what this character, the Witcher, is kind of putting down with that line? Is evil, or is there such thing as a lesser evil?
Ooh, now we're getting philosophical.
Yeah.
I love it.
So this reminds me of like those bumper stickers, like war, what is it good for? Right.
Yeah.
And I always love reading those because I'm like, well, I don't know, like war has, stopped the onslaught of Hitler and several other dictators. It stopped genocides. And so like war is good for something. War has served a good purpose. So I think there are higher and lesser evils. For that's what
I know you believe this. So a little insight about Javier. We were working together. He came into work one day and brought in this phrase to me that, hey, I was just thinking about this. If you kill one murderer, there still is a murderer.
There's but if equal number of murderers.
But if you kill two murderers, there's one less.
You've done a service to society.
So let me just give you a glimpse into his mind. But actually, as we were talking about this, that's a phrase that popped in my mind. I am definitely someone I think I'm going to take. If there's a lesser of two evils in my life, I've seen in this world, you have to make a decision, and that's what The Witcher, I think we see as he progresses further. He's been forced to make choices, and for me, that's what I see in life, where I'm going to have to pick something, and for me, I'm probably going to default to what I view as the lesser evil and hope it works out.
On the other side of that coin, that means that there are also higher and lesser goods, that you can choose a lower good and a better good. I think most people believe that to be true.
I agree with that.
So I'm gonna throw a little insight too about the show and the books. So one of the things that they leave out of the show that I find, it's not disappointing because I think they did a very good job with Renfri's story and how they introduced, that moral. He didn't want to make a choice, and he told both Stregobor and Renfri, "I'm not making this choice. You guys figure it out yourselves." In the books, something they don't show in the show is they tell this story of a sorcerer, and I can't remember his name, but there was an ultimatum put to him by a town. And one of the things with these sorcerers is when they're in a town, they have to do everything in their power to protect the people of the town, no matter what. They have no choice. That's their sentence. By being part of, the king's right hand or the whoever, they have to protect the people of this town or the city.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they don't explain that. Well, what they did was this villain put towards this old sorcerer an ultimatum, said you can either come out and fight me, or I'm going to destroy everyone in this city until you do. And so now he's got a choice: I either live or I follow my edict of protecting everyone. And they called it, whatever this sorcerer's name's, ultimatum. And so Renfrey tells him this story in the woods in the book when they meet, and talks about this thing, and then she puts that same thing to him. You don't see that what's getting ready to happen when he attacks her men is they're getting ready to slaughter everyone in this city to pull Stregobor out. So if they'd explained that a little better, you'd have even more. They forced his hand, both of them. So Stregobor was never going to come out because Stregobor was kind of a dick. Even in the books, he's kind of an asshole. So he wasn't going to come out because he wasn't going to get himself killed. Renfrey was going to kill the entire town of Blaviken in order to draw Stregobor out so that she could kill him. That's where she was when Geralt was killing all her men. She was at Stregobor's palace trying to get him out, waiting for him to come out so they could fight.
Giving him that ultimatum.
Yeah, and so that's why she came back after all that was
so much more sense.
Yeah.
So I'm like, he's been in this position before. You literally just explained that he's been in brawls where he hasn't killed people.
Yeah. Yep. And so they forced his hand knowing he had to choose. Now he has to choose. And I like to think of it, just like you said, Javier, I like to think of it, he chose the greater good, because otherwise all of these townfolk were going to die.
Yep.
So he chose to keep them alive, even though he hated it, to the point that he wouldn't even let Stregobor touch Renfrey after he just got done killing her. And even in the book, it talks about he doesn't know why he wouldn't let him get after her body, but he wouldn't. So it was really interesting context to add to that scene. Makes it a little more powerful, in my opinion, because he was forced to do something he was trying really hard not to do. And from there on, you can watch those decisions get easier for him. He doesn't ever try to set a hard line in the sand. He just says, okay, I'm going to do it because someone's going to force me to if I don't.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to Javier. So now Henry Cavill was the Witcher was the one murderer as opposed to 6 or 7.
Right, exactly. So he did a service.
He did a service.
Killed like 6 or 7 murderers.
The greater good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've definitely established.
Positive,
Yeah,
right?
and then you're in the black. So we've definitely covered. There's some serious moral ground and some great acting that leads you through. Let's talk about the visuals of this show, because I really enjoyed them, but I want to hear what you guys think as you're watching this visually. What has this show done for you?
I mean, I'm gonna just say it. I thought the platinum wig was the only visual I really didn't like. I thought, honestly, I'm just gonna say it was a fail. I don't know what they were thinking. That's my only knock. Everything else, I mean, CGI of some of these monsters was incredible.
I feel like the visuals really fit what they were going for. Dark, kind of grimy at times, but then also elegant and pretty classy. I think is the term. Pretty classy that we've used before. I think they did a really good job at taking you into different parts of the world, whether it be slaying a monster or some extravagant party. I think they did really well with the visuals,
like what Ian was saying, how they can change from being like grimy and dirty to being like on a mountaintop and it's like wide and pretty, and then being in like a dining hall where it's very pretty and elegant. Like, I thought it was really cool how they could kind of change between all of those things.
Yeah, and he kind of fits the format, right? So he'll change himself even though he didn't want to. And everybody's always busting his chops about his clothes. I love that part. You need some new clothes, and he's just like, "Oh God, shut up!" And then they force him into the dinner, and he's in that doublet. He's just like so pissed the whole time.
I love how he's always like cock blocking the Bard. Bard's like trying to sell these stories. He's like, that didn't happen.
For me, visually, I think they started it off right, because the first thing you see is like this just dirty, grimy, scary swamp. And then out pops this giant Kikamora spider-looking slug with a giant face and some gnarly teeth. And then here comes Henry Cavill looking like a wraith almost, with his black eyes and his, he's taking this potion that's making him superhuman in a way. So I really enjoyed that. That's the first thing that you see. And then it goes right into, this very tense bar scene that's visually cool because you feel like you're in that bar. And then the visuals of the fights, I love that. So this might be another thing you guys knew or didn't know, but Henry Cavill trained for like 8 months for this show, and he did every single stunt himself and he said, I picked it up from Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible because he's like, I watched him do this, and then you watch the movie and it pays off visually.
Did Cavill not do his own stunts in Mission Impossible?
So he did some of them, but not all of them.
Oh, okay.
He said he didn't start doing 100% until this show. And that's so every sword fight, that especially for me, the Renfrey sword fight and those guys that he was fighting was one of the coolest sword fights I've ever seen in all of cinema, TV, whatever.
It was very cool.
And he did all of that himself because he's like, I want it so that we don't have to edited around me and a stunt guy. He said I wanted it to, I could turn and do these moves and it was me the whole time. So visually to me, I really loved that he committed that hard because you could just believe that he's doing everything because he is. So I really like that. It's not like effects or anything, but I just love the continuity that gave to the show.
I think the other visual I liked is just his character and the aura around it, how the crowds reacted to people and all the scenes he was in, and just how he was just a boss.
Yeah.
And how he carried himself. And I think that, to me, that was part of the visuals because he was always the focal point of that. And then also bringing Yennefer in there and how both of them in these scenes and how they interacted with the land, the environment, they were always carrying the focal point there. And I thought the production did a great job.
So moving from visuals, and you just mentioned Yennefer Matson. So let's talk about the acting, because, you know, we talked a little bit about the overall of the show and the impact that it had, but I also feel like when it came to acting, and I really love this actress. When I first came into it and I heard who it was, and this is probably, aside from Geralt, the most important character in these stories. They haven't showed that all around yet in the show because it's getting to know who they are. But if you've read the books or played the games at all, you know that Yennefer is like it for Geralt, his girl, right? So, and you can see that in the show, but I was worried when I heard the casting. I don't even know who this is. Like, this is an important part. Is this going to really impact? But I don't feel she did. I felt like she was probably, to me, the highlight of the acting in the show. Besides the fact that Geralt can deliver a grunt and say everything that needs to be said.
Do we know what she was in before this?
I have no idea. I haven't even IMDb'd her, which I should have. But I know her name's Anya Chilada because it's like the coolest name
Oh, that is cool.
ever.
Yeah, I think she really rose to the occasion, especially with a super high caliber actor like Henry Cavill. I thought she matched him super well.
Yeah, she chewed scenes up even when they were together. I couldn't stop looking at her, like on the mountaintop when they were going after the dragon, and not for obviously. I look over and Ian's like had this knee jerk reaction of, "Well, I don't need to know about that."
Of course, you couldn't stop looking.
Well, no, and yes, she's beautiful, right? Her presence on screen was very impactful to me. Like, there's all these people she's with on the mountain. You got the dwarves who are funny as hell. You got these weirdos that are trying to kill everybody, and then you got Geralt himself, and then this, three jackdaws guy. And all I could do was follow her story with this idiot knight, and then she's all pissed off because he gets killed. It was great. I just love her acting.
Indifference to others that were beneath her, but her respect for herself and confidence in herself and what she could do. And she was just like, I'm going to live the life that I want to live. And that's, I think, part of the story where she thought she wanted to be in court and wanted this life that she took. And then later on, we find out it wasn't what she wanted. And we're figuring out that what's more to her, what's next for her. And I think she carried that progression extremely well. I saw her as the confident, in power, but also character at war with herself. I also said because they were also very revealing with her character.
Yes.
And I'm like, hard to get some of those
Literally
images out
or
of your head.
metaphorically?
Like, while we're on the topic, that is one thing that's actually kind of hard for me with like Netflix shows is sex scenes are fine, I guess, if they have a purpose. I feel like a lot of times they just don't have a purpose. To be fair, in The Witcher, I think there are a couple that, like, sure, yeah, they definitely, like, between when Witcher and Yennefer, they like bang it out right after the tower. Yeah. Like, I get that, why that was important that we understand. Okay, this is the next step of their relationship.
Well, yeah, that and there's the wish, his last wish taking its first, rearing its ugly head. So,
yeah.
Because they were just sitting there, and you wouldn't. I mean, obviously, human nature is that's a natural, whether we want to admit it or not. That kind of a high stress situation. Let's relieve some of that stress. But it also was the first step in that. Hey, he just made a wish that connected them.
Yeah.
So how are they not going to, right?
Sure. And so that's what I'm saying. There are some that are like, I get why they're necessary. There are other ones though, dude, where I'm like, you walk into this massive orgy. I'm like, did this progress Yennefer's character? Did I miss something there? Because I feel like that was just like, boom, here's some sex for you guys.
It's definitely out of character from the book. Like that doesn't happen in the book for her. Like they don't ever show that. But I also liked it because it's hard in the book. They have some descriptions of her conversations with Geralt where you kind of get that she's bored all the time. She's just bored and she's a little twisted. And so I think well, yeah,
dude, she's a straight sociopath.
Yeah, she's got some issues, but she's bored. That's her big thing. And so for me, I really thought that kind of showed there's that boredom. But I loved, because the books don't give you a basis of where she comes from in that depth. So I really liked that addition to the show. She wasn't just a character that is a huge part of Geralt's life and Ciri's life even further down the line. But I love that you get that background of where she comes from and how she got there. So I love the way the actress portrayed it. Let's talk real briefly about sound and then we'll wrap up. So audio stuff. Obviously the music for me wasn't memorable.
I don't even remember.
Obviously, I remember they
remember
throw a
one
coin to
song.
your Witcher, right? They throw a coin to your Witcher.
Yeah.
Because
With
it's
the bar.
everywhere now. And it's catchy. Like, I was laughing the whole time because he's so pissed. He's sitting at the horse after, and he's walking down the road singing the song, and Geralt's just like, you motherfucker. Shut the fuck up. But, so I do remember that part. But
It's very like Shrek and
Honestly,
Donkey-esque
kinda, yeah.
relationship.
The thing I remember the most is I wanted to say this earlier with his one-liners is, for me, the sound is just when his one-liners of just saying the F word and just like the scenes where that's literally like all he said and they juxtaposed what was happening. And just that was like the sound of the movie for me. And then like shrieking of scary monsters.
That is true. Like, what would make The Witcher just like feel like fuck?
Oh yeah,
Right?
But
Like-
that's what he did.
There's a YouTube video of someone that has edited all the grunts and fucks, and it's just great to watch. And my favorite is when he
Was that a sex scene?
no, it could have been.
Guys should
One-sided
see Ian right
sex.
now.
The red's
like,
coming through.
Who the fuck am I sitting with? I love the one at the end when he calls the law of surprise, thinking nothing's gonna happen, and then it turns out that she's pregnant, and he's like, "Fuck," and just walks
leaves.
away.
I love that. It's
It's
just like,
so
I'll deal with this later.
Fuck. Yeah, he does. I do love that. That's a good point.
I did like the intro music as well. Like I feel like that really set the tone for coming into an
I don't
episode.
remember it.
Really? I felt like it. I kind of felt like it came from the games a little bit, and
It
kind
did.
of a throwback to that. So.
It did have that feel because, especially the third game, because it's got these intro scenes. Anytime you restart your game, it gives you a quick synopsis of where you're at in your save. It's kind of cool that way.
That's cool.
So Dandelion, or in the show, the Bard, I don't even remember his name.
Jasker or something.
Yasker or something like that. I don't know why they changed his name. He's Dandelion in the books and in the show or in the game.
There's a handful of those changes that I just didn't.
Yeah, there was some that were
agree
just a little weird, but Yaskir is his name in the show, I think. But he's telling the story of where you're at, and I do remember the music in the intro. But I love the intro is visuals too, like where each one has the different symbol
Symbols. Yeah.
that kind of
was cool.
represents what's going to happen in that show, that episode, and then at the end they all turn into the big Witcher symbol. I thought that was badass.
That's very cool.
So, but I love the sound from the Striga when and he's in the castle and the
It,
dude,
like, echoes.
yeah, and he's got the guy tied to the bed, and all of a sudden you just hear this thump and then the screech, and I'm like, you're so fucked. I did love that. All the monsters were pretty cool sounded.
I thought they did a good job at like having those sounds and the music and things like just getting really exciting and then things just being silent. Like there are times when he's hunting the streak and it's just
Yeah, that's what I think I remember. There wasn't a lot of movies they'll add music to that, but I think it was the absence of that music and just the raw sound of the sword or the shriek or footsteps that stuck out to me.
Cool. All right, so let's do our ratings. We talked a lot. We could talk forever about this show, but we're getting pretty long-winded at this point. So let's wrap up. We'll go around the room and do our rankings. We started with you, Javier, last time. I'll start with me this time.
Okay.
I enjoyed the show. I think part of it came from how much I knew about the story before. I think it really dictated how much I liked the show. I think it was well done either way, but I was very swayed by what I already knew and how well they portrayed a lot of that information. So for me, my rating, I'd give it an 8. There were a couple of things that I think were unnecessary, and I think they changed some things that they didn't need to that would have actually and left some things out, like the story with Renfrey. I think just a couple of lines that explain where that came from and why that was so impactful beyond the obvious. I think could have added a little bit more to the story. So I think those things take me from down to an 8. That's where I'm at.
would you watch it again?
I am going to once I finish the third game, just to refresh myself.
For me, my rating kind of bounces around. So overall, I probably do maybe a 6. That might be a little low for some, but
That's super low. Try again.
That's not to say there weren't elements that I liked. Like that first episode, the sword fight scene. I really liked Renfrey's character. I was sad that had to end so quickly because I think she played her very well for how little the part was. So there were parts for me that were maybe an 8, but overall a 6. Would I watch it again? I might actually. Even though it's a 6, I think I would watch it again just to pick up more details, to better understand the timelines and how all those fit together.
For me, it's Mattson again. I'm a little bit of a yin-yang as well, like Ian. I think I'm going to go probably solid 7 again. My biggest knock that you guys heard me talk about at the beginning was just the confusion. I was coming to this completely blind, having to solve some of those things and look them up. All albeit it added more to the story for me, but I was confused until like the 4th episode. I'm extremely excited for the next season. I think there's a lot more to build on, and I think now knowing what I'm getting into, I expect my rating to go much higher for the second season. I'm very hopeful about that. But for some of the areas of confusion and just not understanding, I think 7 fits for me. What do I watch it again? Like Ian, I definitely would. There are episodes I'm going to go back to and watch, especially building up for the second season when it does come out. Yeah. You can bet your bottom dollar I will watch again.
Yeah, I'd probably give it like an 8.5, like JJ. Like I really liked it. It's long, it's a long series, long episodes. So that, like, as much as I did like it, I probably wouldn't watch it again just because it's kind of a time commitment. And it depends on when the next season comes out. I may have to watch it again because I'm not going to really remember.
Retention.
So if I would watch it again, but I probably won't just because it's so long.
I feel like I'll watch a couple episodes just to prep and remember. Or if someone puts out an amazing 30-minute blend in of prepping me for the next season, certainly we'll watch that and really remember. The hard thing about rewatching, you don't even have to rewatch some of this because it's just a piecing everything together at the very end. So it's almost like just give me a 30-minute blend again and I know right where we're at.
Right. That's so true. Like you could totally do a 30-minute synopsis.
And maybe that's why it's hard to say rewatch because it doesn't, all the episodes individually don't really drive home the story, but all of them together kind of do, but that's 8 hours.
Yeah. So, I say that just because I get the characters now. I feel like most of the series is establishing who the characters are and what they're like. Yeah. I just need a refresh of what the plot points are of where I'm at. So,
agreed. Cool. So overall, pretty positive ratings. Definitely in a lot of ways rewatchable, but could condense it down. Sounds like, which makes sense. Even I could agree with that. There's some lengthy parts. So cool. Overall, I think go watch The Witcher if you haven't yet.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Till next time.
Adios.
That's the verdict.